Hello, 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 and welcome to this month's amazing lineup on the Her Version Impact panel. Her Version just hit its 1-year mark and continues to grow at rapid rates. We just hit our 100th guest speaker last week. We have over 450 YouTube videos, over 90 audio podcasts, over 400 members in our Facebook group. Be sure to join us, and drum roll. We just launched our first and definitely not our last podcast marathon. For the first time ever in history, we have had 12 hours straight of females only speaking on our platform. We promise to continue to grow and expand and provide you with beneficial information to help you in your everyday life. I am thrilled to have a female panel filled this month as we speak about depression and anxiety, something so many women and men are dealing with, especially right now. The conversation around this topic will be broad and will guarantee to educate you on so many areas of your life. Join us as we dive deep into our personal journeys and what we have created for ourselves in order to better our lives. There will be live Q&A for those of you that are already jumping on live for the next 2 hours. So get your questions in the comments. For those of you that don't know me, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. If you are new to this podcast, make sure you follow, like, subscribe, and share. Let's jump right in. Generalized Anxiety Disorder, also known as GAD, affects 6.8 million adults, or 3.1% of the U.S. population, yet only 43.2% are receiving treatment. Women are twice as likely to be affected as men. GAD often co-occurs with major depression. Are you tired of the depression and the anxiety that riddles your life? Not sure how to handle it? Tired of it ruling your life? Getting frustrated with the people in your life, not really understanding the real life struggles that are occurring during these episodes? Listen in as we talk candidly about our experiences and give real life examples of what we do to curb these feelings when they arise. If you are someone who deals with these struggles, be sure to listen in. If you know someone who deals with these struggles, be sure to share. We are here to help, inspire, and give hope through our own experiences and through our storytelling. Welcome, ladies. Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody? We have Miss Shelby Shepard, Miss Marie Martin, Renee Hill, Elizabeth Romslow, Emily Tassani, and Tori Bram. I would love the ladies to introduce themselves to you. I'm going to start with Emily. If you could tell us who you are, where you are from, what you do, and why you are speaking on this subject.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm in Helena, Montana, so it is bright and early, 7 a.m. And I'm really grateful to everyone who's on the panel today. I'm really grateful to everyone who's listening and to Sabrina for pulling us all together. So I own an e-commerce-based business where I teach women to grow an income through social selling with an international health and wellness business called Arbonne. And I'm super passionate about our products, our ingredient policy, the ethics of our company. But what I'm most passionate about is empowering women to create economic freedom and time flexibility through this business model in this company. And the reason that having this conversation about anxiety and depression is important to me is once we share our stories, especially as women, about how we personally have been impacted by what anxiety and depression looks like in our lives, we start to pull the veil back so that other women feel less alone in the fact that that is what they deal with as well. And I also think it's really important that in the real world of what anxiety and depression looks like, you don't always know that you are experiencing it until someone tells you, or until you receive a diagnosis, or until there's some sort of light bulb moment. So hopefully today we, in our discussion, we can give you some information that might be helpful for you or someone else in your life. So I'm really grateful to be here.
I love that. Thanks, Emily. We have Marie.
Hello, hello. My name is Marie Martin. I'm from Morgantown, West Virginia, and it is 9 a.m. here on the East Coast. And I am a certified Reiki master, a self-love coach, and a published author. So I just wanted to come on here and tell my story of my being in and out of depression over the last 16 years. This is just my experience and some of the experiences that maybe I've even had with some of my clients. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you for Marie for being here. Tori.
Hi, my name is Tori Brame. I am in Charleston, South Carolina. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about chronic illness and depression. And my day job, I'm a manager of a nonprofit center here in Charleston. And why I'm speaking about this subject, I just feel like depression is normalized. And while I do believe that there should be a lot of empathy, I just am such a strong advocate for getting out of it, finding the help you need, whatever that is for you, and actually changing your life around so you don't have to experience it, because this is your life and it's going to go by no matter how you're feeling. And so why not feel really good?
Sorry, Renee.
Okay, I was going to say, I think you said Renee, but I wasn't sure.
Sorry.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Renee Hill. I am Texas born and Florida raised. I am currently in Southwest Florida. I am a college professor. I also, with my husband, co-own an insurance agency called Hill Insurance Service. I am speaking on this topic today for two reasons. One of them is because when I first experienced issues with anxiety and depression, I didn't have anyone to talk to. I didn't know who to go to ask questions of. And so I want to be that person for someone else. I want people to know that it's okay to ask me questions. I'll be an open book. And the second reason is because even though there is an unfortunate stigma around talking about mental health issues, it is particularly a pervasive negative thing in the African American community. And so I want to stand as a face that is a Black woman that's saying, I am not ashamed that I have a mental health issue. And, you know, if I can make it through it, so can you. So those are my reasons.
Absolutely. Elizabeth.
I could not find my mouse. Good morning, everyone. I am from Philadelphia originally, but I've spent the last 10 years or so of my life in Washington, D.C. And I am the founder of Tech Alchemy. I help women realize their dream of having an online business by birthing their brand with them, and then also guiding them through setting up all of the tech pieces required for their very first funnel, essentially. And we do that in like using all of the technology. So I take all of the overwhelm out of that so that you can feel confident in showing up online. I am here because I've struggled with depression my whole life. I'm looking at 40 this year, and I think I was first treated when I was like 14. So I've been on meds. I've been off of meds. That was its own journey. A week before my 39th birthday, I was also diagnosed with ADHD, which shed a light on a lot of issues for me. And I also like to come at this from an angle of, you know, in a profoundly sick society, maybe depression is not such an abnormal response. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And Miss Shelby.
Hi,
I'm Shelby. I'm from Wyoming, originally born and raised, and I'm actually in Denver, Colorado. Have been for about 13 years now. I'm a graphics manager and office manager for a theater and dance department at one of our local universities. But I am here to speak on depression and anxiety with chronic illness because I have been battling a lung disease for the last 8 years and am preparing for a double lung transplant. So obviously, I kind of have to get my head right and get ready for that life change.
Absolutely. I so happy to have everyone here hanging out with us today on this subject. For those of you that are listening live and already jumping on, we appreciate you being here and supporting us. We can all use some perspective in this area. So I encourage you to share this podcast right now and comment where you are from. Also, this is an interactive forum, so feel free to comment or ask questions. You have place them in your comment section, whatever platform you are watching us on, and they will automatically pop up so we can, well, not automatically pop up, but they will possibly pop up depending on me. And so that we can answer them and give you advice based on our own journey. I would love to start off by just being open and honest with everyone here right now. So, and I'm just being real and I'm not trying to offend anybody, but pretty much my entire life up until about 2 years ago, I have always viewed anxiety and depression as kind of, I didn't really understand it at all. I did an eye roll. That's what that's how I will describe that, as an eye roll when people talk about anxiety and depression. And it wasn't until October 2020 when I snapped my leg in half going on a family walk that I went through all of the cycles of on and off crazy anxiety, crazy depression, and totally have a different outlook on it now. And it's crazy to say that I'm actually very grateful that I broke my leg just for that reason, to be able to truly understand what that feels like. And the, like, you can't pull yourself out of it. It's crazy. It just seemed silly to me at some point. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. I'll share more as we go along, but I do want to start with Emily, if she can reintroduce herself, tell us, tad bit more about yourself, and then ask your question, and then we will kind of roll from there.
All right. Good morning, everyone. When I'm asked to tell more about myself, I never really know where to start. Like, do I share about this is my anxiety, right? Do I share about my personal self? Do I share about my business? Like, what do I share about? But I was born and raised in North Georgia, and I moved to Montana for undergrad, which was a very anxiety-provoking decision. I realize now, looking back, but it was one of the best decisions I ever made, and was a really awesome launching pad to starting to learn more about myself, because I was away from all of the comforts of my life. So I'll just start with that, since that's what we're talking about today. And so I want to start with a question for everyone that I wasn't really sure how to put into words, so I might ramble a bit pulling it out. But I know for me now, as a 38-year-old, I realize that I have struggled with pretty severe anxiety pretty much since I was like 10 years old. And it was always called like, oh, you're so driven and you just do really well under pressure. And I would say the same things about myself. I was the high achiever, but always a lot of feelings of overwhelm. So I want to know from all of you, at what did your anxiety and or depression feel like in real life before you knew that's what it was? So when you look back and you think, at whatever point you received a diagnosis or you learned more about yourself and were able to give it a name, whatever that looked like, but what did it look like, and how did people around you make you feel about what you were experiencing, since you didn't know what to call it yet? Yeah, Renee, take it away.
I really love this question. I've done a lot of work, personally, but then in terms of just my own like reading and things like that, but also seeking professional help about the depression and anxiety. And it really turned on so many light bulbs for me, because I I didn't get diagnosed with anything until I was in my mid 20s, actually more like late 20s. But when I started to learn more about what these things were, I realized that for my entire life, I had been experiencing anxiety, and then like a low level, like my normal was depression, but it was as a child, as a teenager. Um, I would say, I think it's what is it called? Uh, there's dysthymia, I think is what it's called, when you just kind of like, that's your base. It's just not really being okay, but you've learned to function that way, right? Um, so I remember as a kid, I'm an only child, but my both sides of my family, both my mom and dad, both had a lot of siblings, and there were a lot. Like they were like their person. They had these huge personalities. Love them. I love them, but I couldn't manage it. But as a kid, when I would go like to my grandmother's house, where we were always there, my maternal grandmother, we were always at their house, and all of the kids, or all of her kids besides my mom, were still living with her. And so, like, their kids were there, so all my cousins were there. It should have been a fun time. I could manage about 10 minutes before I need to go in a room, but that was considered rude. No, Renee, you have to stay out here with all of us. We're a family. When I needed to get away, and I didn't have the words for how I felt. I just knew it wasn't okay. It didn't feel good to me. And I was trying to escape it. But I also couldn't be disrespectful to my mom or to whoever was saying, no, you have to come back and re-engage with the family. So, again, in general, and some of this was a function of the time that I grew up. So I'm like way older than all of y'all. I'm 47. So, back in my day, no, I mean, when I say nobody was talking about depression and anxiety at all, but they certainly weren't thinking about it or talking about it for kids and for teenagers. So nobody would have been able to notice that the reason that Renee was always the only one trying to hide out in a room was because there may be something else going on with her. They did not have any clue that that could be a thing, right? And then with the depression issue, that low level of just always that undercurrent of, I'm not okay, I don't feel good, I'm always sleeping. I just thought I liked to nap. I mean, I do like to nap, but some of that was me escaping that feeling of, I'm not okay, I'm sad, I'm not sure why I'm sad, I'm not sure why I feel like I don't fit anywhere. So that was just kind of my experience as a child and as a teenager, of not knowing how to feel differently, but realizing other people did not seem to feel the way that I did, and not understanding how come they don't want to hide in a room, how come they don't want to just sit in the room and either cry or just be away from everyone. So I hope I answered your. I lost my train of thought at one point, but I hope I touched your question.
That was perfect. I think that was a great launching pad, because it's a great reminder that anxiety and depression doesn't have to just come from one experience in our life. It can be part of who we are from the beginning. And that reminder that what it can look like for children, I think is so important. So that was perfect. Thank you, Renee. Tori, I saw your hand go up. Take it.
So I have really bad dyslexia. I went to therapy for it, really intensive therapy from the time I was like 15 to 17, I think. And so a lot of my childhood was just faking it. I, didn't want to read in class. I wouldn't attend any study groups in high school or anything because I didn't want anybody to know that I couldn't read. And there was just, I'm one of those like low level anxious people all the time. And I've learned to embrace that over the years and accept it. And like, I love that part of myself, but it was, I was pretty jumpy as a kid. And so that came out as being independent. I didn't need anybody around me. And honestly, I was pushing everybody away because I didn't want them to know that, the imposter syndrome that was always plaguing me. And, that was up through college, and, any work relationships I would have, I wouldn't maintain them after I left, just because, like, I think I just didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want anybody to know me. I didn't want anybody to know that, like, every single day of my life I was waking up and faking it, because I honestly just wanted to freak out. And so yeah, it was definitely independence. It was like, oh, Tori can do anything. She just kind of goes in her room for a while, and then she comes out with this like amazing thing. And, they weren't actually seeing the fact of how hard I was working and how much I didn't want anybody to see how hard I was working.
Thanks, Tori. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for the vulnerability to share all of that, not just with us, but everyone who's watching as well. Yeah. Anybody else? Shelby?
I definitely am one of those, like, kind of like Renee and Tori, where it's just always been there. I've always just been anxious, and it kind of turned into more of a people pleasing, and if everybody around me is good, then why don't I feel good sort of thing. So I constantly made sure everyone around me was good. And then it took a lot of self-reflection and the relationship with my fiance to self-reflect and be like, okay, why am I not good? How do I help myself? And then I can also help my friends around me. So I had to stop pouring from a half empty cup.
Thank you. Yeah. Elizabeth.
I guess, so I mentioned the ADHD, and I think that probably had a little bit to do with the manifestation of the depression. You probably already know that ADHD in girls shows up very, very different than it does for boys. And that's why it goes detected in us for so long. And for me, there was the hyperfocus, and there was definite perfectionism. And in that, I found, like, wow, if I do these things really well, then, like, I get praise. I'm an only child as well. So I was very surrounded by a lot of adults. So it was just always like a constant seeking of external validation. And I don't ever remember a time that I didn't have like a certain amount of like darkness or loneliness. I was teased pretty mercilessly as a kid. I really honestly don't know if I would have made it out of high school or middle school alive in the age of social media. I can't say that. It was pretty bad. And it reared its ugly head when I was about 14 and started exploring the route of self-harm through burning. And that's when I received a diagnosis of depression, because, like, why else would you be hurting yourself? I mean, actually, I feel like there's a myriad of reasons why you might be exploring self-harm that might not be depression. But yeah, so it's a little bit strange. I feel like I've had a diagnosis for so much of my life. But I do remember that kind of cold hole being a reality of my life since I was a very young kid. And I remember thinking, like, I don't believe that God would let any of his children feel this bad. So he must not exist. And that was at like 5 years old. So, yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I feel like I would want to take a rabbit hole down the conversation, the topic you just mentioned at the end, but we'll just hold that for now. But I feel like there's so much there. Does anyone else have anything else you want to add to this part of the conversation? Yeah, Sabrina.
So for me, I had a short spout of a mix of anxiety and depression. And for me, it felt like, why bother doing anything, like, at all? There was a lot of nothing really matters and no one cares, and the universe keeps shitting on me, so why even try? So there was a lot of crying. There was a lot of round and round in circles in my head of stopping and going and stopping and going and stopping and going, like with work, physically, health-wise. So, when I look back, it was kind of a lull of an overall lull of sadness and why bother? That's the only word I can think of. Like, why bother even getting up?
So I really appreciate that everyone's contributions, but I love that perspective for this conversation, because I think a lot of times when society talks about anxiety and depression, society thinks that it has to be really severe in order to be tended to. When in reality, those emotions that you just explained, if those are low lying all the time, for those of us that, specifically if you deal with anxiety and depression long term,
Yeah.
that is so exhausting.
Yeah.
And to try and also build a life with carrying that and knowing that society is judging you, like, oh, well, if you just pull yourself out or start a new routine. And I'll just say briefly, I very much am a person that believes that you can change some of your mindset and circumstances with routine and habits, but that doesn't cure or take the place of the other forms of care, whether that be medication or therapy or what have you, for what anxiety and depression look like. And I think having this conversation is really important to remind everyone that you don't have to be at the end of your rope with anxiety and depression to be paid attention to. So I really appreciate everyone's contributions to that question. Marie, I think I'm passing the floor to you.
I do want to insert something here. Elizabeth just commented the word erosion. Can you expand on that just for a little bit before we go to Marie?
Yeah, I just, as you were talking about how, it doesn't have to be this huge, severe thing, it doesn't have to be a suicide attempt in order to be tended to. But that daily, every single time every single time you wake up, the first question you answer to yourself is like, why bother? Like, that is exhausting. And like, how can you build a foundation when it is eroding in front of you? That's all. That erosion was the word that came to mind when you and Emily were talking. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Marie.
Hello, ladies. So I've been trying, I went through the 3 questions. I've been thinking of questions as we're talking, and I think I'm going to go with what happened last night. And then I'll see what you guys would have done in my situation. There was a lover's quarrel in my backyard last night. And there was a kid with a gun on his shoulder, and the girlfriend grabbed him and said, don't do this. And he said, do you want me to blow my head off right now? And she said, no, I need you to go inside, put the gun down, and shut up. And that was very concerning to me, that this was all happening right outside my window. And they are my neighbors. So it was also concerning that, something might happen, in my own space. So we let it ride out, and just made sure, there wasn't anything else going on. He ended up leaving. So yeah, I just really hope that they're okay. I have a feeling that alcohol was involved, because I've seen them do that from time to time. So what would you guys have done in my situation? Tori?
That's good.
So I have a little experience in this situation. I was a case manager for homeless people. And there was a lot of that. There was a lot of, mental illness, drugs, and stuff like that. And so in that situation, I probably would have, one, called the cops, and then two, gone out there and been like, hey, is there anything you guys need right now? Just to let them know, because the more people are watching, the less people do stupid stuff. And so it was like, me and the other case managers, if there was ever a situation, we would like send out the bat signal, and everybody would show up and just be like, hey, do you need anything? Is everything going okay? And then the person kind of like saw themselves as an outside person and was like, oh wow, I'm about to do something really stupid. I'm gonna calm down a little bit. So that's probably what I would have done.
Thank you, Tori. Renee?
Tori, you are brave, because when I heard the word gun, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be under the bed. So I think that's a perfect response, actually. Or if I had the ring, I would maybe say it through the ring, like, hey, is everything okay? Can I help with anything? I think, as much as people lately are saying, don't call the police. The police are going to make things worse or whatever. When you have someone who's obviously behaving erratically and has the ability to actually carry out the thing they said that they're going to do, I think my first response would have been to call the police and probably plead with them to say, I don't think this person is a threat to you or to someone else, but they could potentially get out of control. They need help. Can you send, maybe an ambulance with the police, just to make sure that somebody can kind of, triage them and talk them down from what's going on. I think it's also important to know that as much as we want to help in situations like that, and can, to the extent that it doesn't compromise our own or safety or our kids or our spouses or whomever we're in relationship with, as long as it doesn't compromise their health and safety, helping is not always what we need to do, right? Some things are just beyond our ability to assist with. And we need to be able to step away from the situation, call in the people who can do the work and actually do help, and not bear any guilt for not wanting to get involved, right? I mean, there's just some things, like, for example, if that had been me last night, and let's just say that my husband wasn't here and I was just here with my two youngest kids, who are 8 and 9, there is zero chance that I was going to get involved or, go out, let them even know I heard them, right? Because I don't know how far that person may have taken it. So I probably would have taken my kids into a whole other room and played a game under the bed, right? Like, not let them get all alarmed, but we don't need any parts of that situation, because we don't need to get hurt, right? So I just think there's nothing wrong with stepping out and saying, I'm going to help, but there's also nothing wrong with saying, I cannot fix a situation and I'm not going to compromise my safety.
That's good.
Yes, thank you, Renee. Anyone else like to add to this? Elizabeth?
Yeah, just on the heels of what Renee was saying, my thought process is always around like, well, what happens after? What happens after the cops leave? What happens after, the bat signal's been responded to and everyone's said their piece? I'm always concerned about, like, what's the reaction? Like, look at what you made the neighbors do. Like, that's what I think probably I don't know. I have this like, ooh, that's not my story. I'm not getting involved. that can tend to be, I mean, it would totally depend on my existing relationship with them, and how well I felt that I knew them. If I would, call the cops or be the one to say something personally. Because I mean, yeah, I feel like the aftermath of, like, once they get back inside, what could be, what could potentially happen in the aftermath. I always like jump 5 steps ahead. I don't know. That's just where my brain goes. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been having issues with them for a while. This wouldn't have been the first time that I have called them out on something. So I would be concerned, because I have to live next to them, as far as like trying to really step in there and be like, you got to straighten up kind of thing. So I would much rather someone else deal with that, as you said, Elizabeth. Anyone else? Sabrina.
This is a really tough one for me because, I mean, how do you help somebody in a situation that they're stuck in if we don't say anything? Or like, sometimes people need us to step in. So although, like, yes, our safety first, but then, like, where's the point in which we, what if somebody's really, in a bad spot mental? What if it's an abusive relationship? Like, we don't even know, and they could have gone outside because they need somebody else to hear, to help. So I guess it's based on the situation. So, like, you're saying this is an ongoing thing, so obviously the police have been called at some point or another, I'm assuming. So if there was help needed, the female or the male or whoever's being abused would have had a couple of opportunities to be able to speak to authorities about the situation, I would hope. But the first thing that comes to my mind is the Gabby Petito whole crap. And like, she was being mentally, emotionally abused. No one even freaking knew it because it's so subtle. And the police got involved, and she had an opportunity. Someone called, saw them arguing, and the police didn't quite maybe step in the way that they maybe should have. Hindsight's always 20/20. But that's the first thing that came to my mind as we're talking, is like, you should step in, even if it's calling the cops. Like, maybe not you yourself, as Tori said, because you're like the neighbor, but as Tori said also, sometimes you do need to intervene a smidge because you don't know who's needing assistance. Like, Gabby's this little tiny innocent little childlike woman, who needed assistance, and she didn't quite get what she needed, and then 2 people died because of it. Scary.
Well, for me specifically, I had 2 very abusive boyfriends. One ended up in the mental institution, and then the other one ended up in the hospital because he wrecked his 4-wheeler and ended up, puncturing his lung and all kinds of things after we broke up. So I understand, at what lengths someone can go in a relationship. And so I was definitely thinking about those things last night as that was happening.
Yeah, it's scary. Totally. I know in my past, I mean, I wanted to call the cops and I didn't have the guts to call the cops. So if somebody else would have called the cops for me, I would have been so grateful, because he would have held that against me if I would have done it,
Right.
But if somebody else would have done it, that would have, and I would have been able to speak to somebody, that would have been such a relief. First of all, to know that somebody cared enough to do that. And then second of all, to be able to talk to some sort of authority who maybe would have told me, like, hey, this whole situation's fucked up.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was totally naive. you know. Anybody else on Marie's question? We're heading to Tori.
Hi, Tori Bray. I kind of want to, we've talked a little bit with Emily's question about like how it all started. I want to know, like, what is your maintenance like now? Like, what is something that you're doing to keep that big, ugly blackness at bay? For myself, it's definitely having good boundaries. I am also on Wellbutrin. It's the 5th medication I've tried. And that is when exercise, meditation, diet, all that stuff was not cutting it. And I'm so thankful to be on it. It really works for me. And then also just like meditation and like constantly learning about the universe and a higher power. Like I listen to podcasts like all day long. So I want to know what it looks like for you. And I kind of want to hear from everybody because I'm so curious as to like what you guys do for yourself, what your self-care looks like in that way. Emily.
Okay. Thank you for this question, Tori. Okay. I'm 38. I started taking medication. So I take Lexapro November of 2020. But my first realization that I struggled with anxiety, I was about 22 years old, and I was eating Prilosec, like so much Prilosec, because I just my stomach was upset all the time. I had heartburn, that was how it was presenting for me. I was in college. I was living in Montana. I was far away from my family, my support network. I was in a very rigorous professional program for sports medicine. And I had gone to all these professionals to have all these tests run. And I happened to be home that summer in Georgia visiting a GI specialist. And they, I don't even remember what it was, but they did some sort of test on me. And the doctor had terrible bedside manner. He was, pretty young man. And he came in and he was like, so all your labs look great. You have some sort of anxiety or depression, and you got to figure out how to take care of that. And that's all. And at 22 years old, I was furious. I was hurt. And I thought, I'm absolutely not dealing with anxiety or depression. That cannot be true. You have to find something wrong with these labs. But as the days went on, I started to realize maybe this was a gift that he was so straightforward with me and just dropped it in my lap. I know that's not the case for everyone, but for me, it was like a wake-up call. So I started to shift my routine. I've always been an exerciser. Movement is really important to me. So I turned movement into my routine of self-care. And I still am in that habit. I wake up between 4:45 and 5 a.m. every morning. This morning, it was a little bit earlier so that I could be ready for our panel. But every morning, whether it's yoga or gentle meditation or a HIIT workout or cycling or going for a run, I incorporate all sorts of movement. And for a long time, that really worked for me. I also changed my diet and cut out dairy and gluten, which are huge triggers for stomach issues, which are huge triggers for mood shifts, which are huge triggers for really intense anxiety. So I eat a very plant-based whole foods diet, which also worked for a long time. And then insert a little over 5 years ago, we lost our first child, which brought on a whole new level of depression and postpartum and just dealing with the long-term reality of grief after the death of a child and the physical experience of stillbirth and giving birth to our child that was dead, right? Like there's a whole experience that I now have to deal with around. It increased my anxiety and it brought my depression straight up to the front. So I dove further into movement, staying very routine with my diet, and then also making sure I had time for myself. And then insert the pandemic. And that was like a whole new level, right? So I did try an antidepressant shortly after losing our son. but it was not the right fit for me. And anyone who's tried medication knows that it is a struggle. It's a long-term adventure journey to try and find the right medication if medication ends up being the right fit. And it was not the right one for me. So I was very hesitant to try another one, but insert the pandemic and all of that, I finally started taking Lexapro. So now I take care of myself with a daily dose of Lexapro, a daily dose of ashwagandha root at night. I take a melatonin spray to help me have restful sleep. I exercise, I eat well, and I'm very protective, like you mentioned, with boundaries of if it's something in my life that doesn't feel like a hell yes, it is a no, thank you, not right now. And it's not always like that, but I'm really continuing to work on it because that's how I protect myself so that I don't get into that overwhelm, so that I can continue to show up as the best business owner, business partner, wife, mother to our living son, and to process continually all the things that are always in my brain. So I know that was kind of a long answer, but thank you for giving me the space to share. And I really appreciated that question a lot.
I love that so much. And I love that you didn't give up. Like, it was like you kept trying other stuff like that. I love that. Yes.
Oh, Shelby.
Sorry.
So for me, self-care used to be movement also. So I used to do snowboarding or go out camping or hiking or anything like that because I'm in Denver, Colorado. And then I have been struggling with this lung disease for the last 8 years. And it was at first so easy just to be mad at my situation because I started getting sick at 23, 24, and I'm now 31. And I started to turn my mindset more towards what am I fighting for instead of what am I fighting with. Trust me, it's not easy every day because it's exhausting to get up and have to be on oxygen or be coughing or anything like that. But I am starting to set boundaries of kind of, Emily, what you were saying, is this worth my energy? I call it energy points. And is this experience going to be worth my energy points that I have to then take a few days to restock? Like I went to New Orleans because it was worth my energy points from a bachelorette party, and that took a few weeks to recover.
Can I ask you a question?
Uh-huh.
How many energy points do you allow yourself?
It depends on what the activity is. So if it's going to take like a lot, it will probably be a 3 to 5 day recovery. Wow. So it just depends on if I also have that in my wheelhouse to recover from, because I also have my full-time job, which going to the double lung transplant team, they're baffled that I still work full-time. And I'm like, I don't know how to sit still. But it is definitely finding those things that I find worth fighting for, which is relationships or being creative in my job or making sure that I'm happy. So my fiance and I own a CBD company, and that our CBD bath bombs are part of my ritual. So if I really need to recover, I'll do one of our bath bombs. But Emily, like you were saying with gut health, it really makes a difference. You got to make sure your gut is healthy. Otherwise, you're going to have some bad anxiety from that too.
I love that. Thank you. Who else? Yes, Elizabeth.
This might not be a great answer because I don't really feel like I'm in a space that I have a lot of data at the moment, actually. So when I was in college, I think maybe around 21, 22, I had started on hormonal birth control. And fast forward, I was on some type of hormonal birth control all the way up until the end of 2018. And make no mistake about it, hormonal birth control is a mood-altering drug. It stabilizes you, period. Like, it's often not talked about, but that was actually the primary reason that I went on it, was to help regulate my mood around my period. And then I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I did make the decision to go on medication, and was treated for both anxiety and depression. So first was Zoloft, and then they added in Wellbutrin on top of that. And I was very lucky with that process because both did what they were supposed to do to me right off the bat. One of the really funky, sneaky things about these medications is that they can have the absolute opposite desired effect. They can make all of your symptoms worse, and they don't know why. The same thing that I'm on can have, terrible effects for the person next to me, and whatever someone else is taking might have had the opposite effect for me. So, I was on those two medications until when did I start coming off? November of 2021. So very recent. And the Wellbutrin was really easy to drop off of. The Zoloft, not so much. When I tell you, like, brain zaps, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of brain zaps, but it's basically like, it's like your brain short circuits. Sort of like if you're watching TV and like the connection cuts out for like a hot second. And then there's also like a physical sensation that goes with it. It's extremely disorienting. And it was pretty miserable. I was also at that point just recently diagnosed with ADHD, as I mentioned, and so they had added in the Adderall, and I think the Adderall was actually staving off the brain zaps because the brain zaps were really bad at night. I got to the point where I was crushing up Zoloft and taking like my fish oil pill, and I would just like lick the end of my fish oil pill and dip it in Zoloft dust. And I did that for about a month before. I mean, like, that's pretty scary, I think, that a drug can be that powerful, that just like dust can help you with withdrawal symptoms. I mean, it's really intense. Fast forward to now, I am 100% pharmaceutical free for the first time in my adult life. So that's been an adventure. Coming off of the meds, there was some discussion about whether or not I might have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoria disorder, because around my period, I was very seriously suicidal for days. And my last couple cycles, I'm pleased to report that if I wasn't tracking my period, I wouldn't necessarily know that it was coming. So I don't know, like, I feel really good and I feel really happy for the first time in my life. And then my mother dies 2 weeks ago. So it's like, what the fuck? I've got so many tools now that I didn't have before. Always training myself to like look for the things in a situation that I am thankful for. Maybe something didn't go the way that you wanted, but maybe it went the way, like in a way that was preferable. So yeah, I don't have a lot of data. I mean, yes, the diet is hugely important. If you look for Michaela Peterson, she's Jordan Peterson's daughter. She's on the Lion diet. It's all meat, only meat. And she cured her depression and another very severe autoimmune disease with that diet. So she's like med-free and all of that. So yeah, diet is hugely important. And I have to be careful with exercise because I tend to fall into the trap of using exercise as punishment. I love working out to the point where I am just a shivering mess on the floor. Like, I love that. Just so intense that I'm shaking. Which isn't always the best for your nervous system. So, yeah. That's me.
Wow, that's
I'll get back to you
amazing.
when I have more data.
Yeah, and I want to hear, like, that's yeah, I love that, because like with the birth control, like you said, you didn't get a chance to sample adulthood medication free. Like, wow. Miss Renee, yes.
Okay. So in terms of self-care, I wanted to touch on something that Elizabeth shared. Brain zaps. If anyone on this panel or that's watching in the audience has not experienced those, I'm not sure about those who have. But my doctor never mentioned that brain zap. I didn't even know what the word brain zaps was, right? So I'm starting that way to say, in the event that you are taking some kind of antidepressant, it's really important to read the pamphlet. I know those pamphlets have tiny print and there are many, 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 many pages, but there's so much that doctors either don't know to tell you or just won't tell you. Because I know in my case, my doctors were saying, you should plan to be on this for the rest of your life. And it just never occurred to them that maybe I wasn't going to be, and I was going to need a plan for discontinuation.
Wow.
And doctors will tell you that, no, you shouldn't just stop cold turkey. However, sometimes you do it on mistake. So for example, for me with the brain zaps, I had gone on like a 3-day vacation and I forgot my medication. And I thought, well, I'll be okay. I've been on it for a couple of years. No big deal. It'll be in my system. 2 days in, and I felt like I had the flu, and the brain zap things were happening, but I didn't know what they were. So I honestly thought that I literally was short circuiting. I thought that I was probably dying, right? So those are just, I just wanted to piggyback on what Elizabeth was sharing, just in case people think, oh, that's a rare side effect, because they'll tell you it's a rare side effect. No, it's not. No, it's not. There's actually whole communities out there that talk about discontinuation side effects and what folks don't tell you. So I'm sorry, I had to throw that out there because I think it's important for people to understand that while these medications can be amazing and actually life-saving, for me they were, but when I was ready to be done, nobody was helping me get off of them. And so, like, for example, like I said, I mistakenly did the cold turkey thing once, and then when I came back and resumed the medication. But then when I decided that I didn't want to be on the meds anymore with what I was on, which was Effexor, there was only so low a dose they could take me because it's a capsule that's filled with stuff. And at some point, you just you gotta stop. And it was, I mean, I was sick, absolutely sick. So I just want to share that. In terms of daily maintenance or regular maintenance, I'm very vocal with, well, first of all, I have a really understanding husband, right? He's just naturally, how can I serve you today? He's an amazing man. And I have never, ever felt like I couldn't share with him what I was going through. Whereas with other people, even though I'm able to talk about my struggles, I still have this element of kind of embarrassment, or like, oh, okay, what are they going to think? Are they going to think, oh, she really is crazy, right? That's not how it is with Tom. He's really able to hear me and see me. So I'm vocal with him and saying, today isn't feeling like a really good day. Can you help me figure out how to get out of this funk? Or can you help me because I'm feeling seriously anxious today and I'm trying to avoid a panic attack? Can you just help me figure out, like, and he'll walk me through, like, what happened before you started feeling this way? What do you need to cut out today so that you don't go over to the dark side, right? So that's something I've gotten good at, in terms of just being able to be open and say, hey, I'm not okay today. Something else that I do, so I've had many years of mental health therapy, and I feel like, and I felt like I came to a point where I had kind of dug up all the stuff from my past that was going to get dug up. I feel like therapy is amazing for doing that. Not so much, at least not the people that I had, not so much with talking about, well, how do I plan for this amazing future? So what I've now done, I have a life transformation coach. By the way, her name is Laura Walker. She's amazing. I just wanted to plug her. Um, and so I have weekly sessions with her, and I also know I can check in with her anytime I need to, because at this point, I am so focused on how can I be the best version of me that I can be, because I know that my purpose on earth is to help other people be their best selves. So I need to be at the top all the time. I need to be at the top of my game. And I don't feel pressured to do that. I feel like excited to do that, right? So I try really hard to make sure that I am surrounding myself with people who are also striving for greatness. That has meant, honestly, that I have had to say goodbye to some folks, not because they're not valuable people, but because they were not going to be able to be supportive of me moving on to who I need to be. And I can't allow, I'm good at dragging myself down. I don't need help in that area. Right. So I just make sure that I surround myself to the greatest extent possible with people who are interested in getting better, doing better, striving for higher.
I love that. That's amazing. And just about the medication thing that you mentioned, this Wellbutrin is my 5th one. And I tried Lexapro, which I'm so glad, Emily, that works really well for you. But I wasn't even on it a full month because my panic attacks were so bad. Like it just was not the right fit for me. And another reason why I love Wellbutrin is because it is short lasting. So you don't experience that, SSRI withdrawal when you try to get off of it. So I think Elizabeth mentioned that too, where it's like, it's not, it wasn't an issue to get off of. Anyway, that's my little experience with trying different antidepressants, because damn, they're intense. Marie, yes?
I started out with Lexapro, and then I got on Wellbutrin with the Lexapro, and then I got on Xanax for a short period of time. I was having major panic attacks. I thought the neighbors were listening in on me. That was the most intense that it ever got. I was living by myself. My ex-husband was in the military. He was over in Iraq. So it was very much an alone time, as well as the pressure of taking away all of that stuff. But I got off the Lexapro. I went straight Wellbutrin. I did not take the Xanax very long. I didn't like the way it made me feel at all. And then I was on the Wellbutrin for a while, and I lost my health insurance with my ex-husband and I getting divorced. And I decided that it was time to stop the medication because I couldn't afford it anyways. So I started looking at different options as far as, natural healing. And that's how I ended up with Reiki. So I do like daily body scans to find out specifically where that emotion is stuck. And I try to do sessions on myself to try and release them, or at least just allowing it to be what it is. So I've definitely gotten to that point where I've just allowed myself to feel these things, and to know that I can comfort myself a little bit, and know that it's okay and that I'm gonna be okay. That's just my personal opinion. That's not necessarily something that's going to work for anyone else. So definitely keep looking for different modalities or techniques that work for you. Don't give up. It's definitely through medication, through talking to doctors, through, talking to people. Just don't give up. Just keep looking, because there is something out there for everyone.
And I love what you said about like accepting accepting whatever that is. Because that was actually my story with my anxiety. Like, Wellbutrin does not touch my anxiety, but it cures my depression. And with depression cured, I love my anxiety. It's like part of my personality. It's like, I don't know, it like revs me up. And it's like, it totally changed my perspective on that. Instead of like, oh no, I can't feel anxious, that's not good. It was like, no, I'm an anxious person. Like, this is part of me. And so yeah, embracing that is really amazing. Sabrina.
So mine's kind of a statement and a question to everyone. So I've never been on medication. I've never taken anything. And that could be good, that could be bad. I don't know. When I first got on here and I told my story about rolling my eyes to people who have talked about anxiety or depression in the past, I was undiagnosed anxiety and depression, single mom, no money, always feeling like I'm going to, die, commit suicide, then entering into a narcissistic relationship for 13 years where every single day I'm told that I'm an idiot and I'm stupid and I don't know anything. So, panic attacks so bad that I'm on the floor, like bawling my eyes out, just complete despair. And at the same time, rolling my eyes at people who talk about anxiety and depression. So it's kind of interesting looking back now, realizing that it was almost a thought inside of me of, oh, you have it bad, girl, you should take a step into my life. It was kind of one of those things like, if I can do it, you better straighten up. You can do it too. And I think it was just coming from a point of just absolute sadness. And it's nothing that I would say out loud. It's stuff that I would say internally. But to get to Tori and answer her question first, before I ask my question and insert right in front of Renee here, I say no a lot. So one of the things that I do for my self-care to make sure that I don't get overwhelmed or feel those anxious feelings is I have no problem saying no. And I say no to silly things. So my fiance and I are leaving to go on an errand, and we always fill up our water bottles before we leave. And he'll ask me, hey, can you fill up my water bottle? And sometimes I will say no. Similar to what Shelby said, you have a certain amount of points. So in my mind, sometimes it just doesn't, it feels like I'm being taken advantage of. I cleaned today. I cooked today. I did 2 loads of laundry today. I am no longer doing things today. So it's really checking in with myself and really acknowledging how many points, I guess, which I thought was so brilliant of Shelby to give us as a way of keeping track of where our threshold is in what we're capable of doing. And me being, having codependent tendencies, empathic tendencies, I sometimes go above and beyond for all the people in my life to the point of having nothing left for myself. So I try really hard to not do that any longer. And I try really hard to make sure that the things that I'm doing in my life sit well with me mentally. So that's to answer the question, is I say no a lot, even to silly things. I don't care. The question that I have that is coming up for me, and now I forgot my question. Oh, my question is, this is kind of like what Emily said, where I don't know how to word this. So I've never been on medication. I didn't know I had anxiety and depression, even though I'm like falling to the ground, bawling my eyes out for hours at a time, literally on the ground. I'm not exaggerating. I'm literally on the floor in my house with my boyfriend or fiance at the time screaming at me, bawling, shaking, and like wanting to drive my car off bridges on a consistent basis, like consistently for years. I think to myself, all I have to do is just twist my wheel just this way, just a little bit, and my car will just fly off the bridge. And then everything, these are like consistent things that were happening. So 2 people like me who are sitting right now in their home, who are feeling feelings that they're not, I don't know, is that just being naive? I don't know. But they're not connecting. I did not connect what I was doing, which is so obvious now, to being anxious or having depression. What is a person supposed to do? They're listening, we have an audience, they're resonating with what we're saying. They're like, oh my gosh, this is me, whatever they're thinking. What are they supposed to do first step? Are they supposed to pray? Are they supposed to go to the doctor right now? What should they be telling their, are they, a lot of you guys are saying these medications are addictive. Why would I want to go on a medication? And that sounds super scary to me. Emily's going more of a naturalistic way. And so is Marie right now. So what would you guys, ladies, say should be the first, second step into opening up this discovery right now? Marie?
I would start out with maybe even some YouTube videos. Like if you're not necessarily even thinking about, like, you don't want to go to a doctor, or you don't have the money, or you don't have the insurance or whatever, like definitely go to YouTube. I mean, there are so many resources on YouTube that are free to you. Whether it's natural, just really think about it to yourself, like what is drawing to you, like what is it that makes you excited, and not upset or depressed, and then just follow your heart that way. Even just to listen to some Hertz music during the day, just to calm yourself a little bit so that you can think about where it is that you need to go next. That would just be my suggestion.
Thanks. Anybody else? Tori?
I'd say diet. Diet is such a huge one, like cutting out sugar and gluten, dairy, if you can swing it. A lot of people just have that, like, can't cut out my cheese. But that is, I'm on a very strict diet just because I have lupus. And so I have to be very careful. And so it's actually grain free. And that was a really huge one for me. But it's like now, since I've been in remission for so long, I'm coming up on 3 years. I can add things back into my diet. My doctors are like still, like dumbfounded that I'm still on this thing, because they're just like, you're in remission. You can do whatever you want now. But I've started adding things back. So, every now and then I'll have some rice, or I'll have some corn chips if I'm like out at a Mexican restaurant or something, and I can feel my mood dip. And so I just feel like that is a really great place to start, just to kind of pay attention to what you're eating. Don't make any changes yet, but like pay attention to, if I have this cookie the next day, I'm kind of in a worse mood or something like that, then you can kind of pinpoint those things and then just play around with taking those out and see what happens.
Love that. Emily?
So I think for anyone who's listening right now and hearing what we are all sharing and feeling like maybe you identify with something, my first suggestion would be, don't get caught in a comparison trap, which has already been kind of brought up, that again, you don't have to be at the very end of your rope in order to start to look for ways to care for yourself. And you don't have to be as bad as someone else in order to invest in different ways to care for yourself. And I also would say, hopefully this conversation and conversations that are happening more candidly, especially women talking about, and just anyone talking about anxiety and depression, I think our first reaction in our brain is shame that we haven't identified it previously, or that there's something wrong with us. And then we get caught in a shame spiral, and we're less likely to seek care for ourselves when we are in that shame spiral. So I also want to remind anyone who is here watching live, the replay, years later, listening to this, there is no shame in needing to take care of your health. And, you know, you hear it all the time, like people take care of their health and wellness with fitness and food all the time. And taking care of your mental health is equally as important. I'm very passionate about talking about the 7 dimensions of wellness, that you cannot have a fully aligned wellness if you are not also taking care of your mental health alongside the other aspects of what wellness is all about. The wellness wheel is very expansive. It's way more than just food and fitness, right? So, and I know for me, for a long time, food and fitness worked, and then it didn't. And then it wasn't enough. So if you're also someone who has gone more of like the non-medication, more like movement fitness route, and that has worked, but maybe it doesn't work anymore. You know, for me, I got to the place where literally every morning I felt like there was an elephant on my chest, just in the bathroom, trying to get ready. I couldn't catch a breath. And I thought, holy shit, is this like, why isn't it working anymore? Why isn't the way I eat and the way I take care of myself with movement working anymore? So if that's you as well, there is no shame in looking to if there is a medication that might work for you, if there is a therapist that might be a good fit for you. If you have done therapy and talk therapy isn't the right therapy, look at EMDR, right? There's so many tools that are out there. And I'll just, one more little asterisk there. Not everyone has access to those tools, right? Not everyone has access to healthcare. Not everyone has the money to pay for medication. So I think we also, as a society, like, right, like how do we also have the conversation about, because Tori mentioned, right, if you're working with people that are experiencing homelessness specifically, we know that a lot of times there's mental health that aligns with that struggle with homelessness. And we see that all the time as well in society, where people can't afford medication. They can't afford therapy because we haven't prioritized mental health in a way that says we care about your mental capacity, and here now our healthcare will take care of it for you. So I feel like I have many answers to this question, but I hope that whoever's listening knows there's no need to compare. There's no shame. Find the things that you need to do to take care of yourself, and it will take time. It will absolutely take time, and you have to be patient with yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that. Patience is key for sure. And last comment will be Elizabeth, and then Renee will be up next.
I wanted to piggyback on a few things. Yeah, absolutely. Don't judge the emotions data. And that can be, I mean, just relieving yourself from like either the guilt or shame of experiencing what you're experiencing can be the thing that allows you to move forward and seek treatment. And as far as talk therapy goes, I would recommend interviewing a handful. It's kind of like dating, unfortunately. Do not judge the experience of talk therapy by simply one appointment with one therapist, because it's as many different people, therapists, as there are as how many different experiences you can have. I say that as someone who has had several different therapists over the course of 25 years. So some of them were great and some of them were not so great. And also kind of to circle back to something that Renee had mentioned about working with a coach, I think maybe we work in cycles. Everything is cyclical. There's this saying, new level, new devil. When you work through something, you can kind of like up level to like the next floor in the apartment building, so to speak. And then like that same thing will show up in a different way. It'll rear its ugly head and it'll look different. And then you'll unpack it. And it's like, God, I thought I freaking dealt with that thing. Like, it's so there's a cycle of like addressing the past and then preparing for the future, and addressing the past and preparing for the future. And it's always like peeling back these layers of an onion. So yeah, that's sort of my answer to that question.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone who commented. And I do want to note also that my situation there was situational. So it wasn't after I exited that relationship, all of those feelings literally disappeared almost overnight. And it was an absolute relief and lightness that I felt as I walked from one home into another home, which was my home. It was a total change of pace. So, for those of you who are, dealing with stuff like this, it might be a good idea to maybe look around and see, work, relationships, environments that you are in that could be causing you some sort of feelings or struggles mentally or emotionally, and to possibly take steps. I had to make a plan, to escape. And it took a very long time. But the moment I started making a plan to leave my abuser, it lightened up. The moment I started creating a plan, collecting money, writing down, steps on how I'm going to do this, it became a little lighter. So I am going to hand the mic off to Miss Renee to say hello and ask a question.
Okay, so hello again. I want to give just a little bit of background to lead up to the question. So, when I was at, I would say my worst, when I guess I had not quite yet been diagnosed officially with having a clinical depression, but I was low, y'all. It was really bad, and there was one evening where I just could not turn off the cycle of horrible thoughts. I just couldn't do anything. I was just sobbing. And I called the first friend I could think of to call. And I remember, sobbing on the phone to her and just saying, I just want to die. And she chastised me, right? And she told me that, no child of God would say things like that. And I should be ashamed of myself. And, to be fair, she had no clue. I didn't even know officially that this was depression. I didn't know what was happening. All I knew was I was really bad and I needed somebody to say something. I didn't know what the something was, but it wasn't that. Okay. And then after that conversation, it was clear that she did not really want to have too much to do with me. I think maybe I scared her. I don't know. So I said all that to then ask the question: have any of you experienced someone either distancing themselves or fully just removing themselves from your life as a result of whatever you were experiencing through depression or through anxiety? Tori.
So mine was actually a really long time ago. When I was 10, I moved from my beautiful home in New Hampshire to South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, and different culture, different people, different weather. It was a pretty drastic change for me. And so I had, all my friends were in New Hampshire, and these were girls that I was basically born next to. And we all homeschooled. So it was like even throughout the week, like we would see each other and then again at church. And so when I went through really bad depression for probably 4 years, and where it was like I was crying all the time. I couldn't find joy. It sounds crazy to have like a 10-year-old have those symptoms, but I did. I really did. And every time I was on the phone with my friends, I would cry and I would just tell them, how nothing was the same and everything like that. And these are kids. Like they want to go have fun. They want to make new friends. They want to, do all these things. And I lost all of them. Like all of them would just stop calling me. They would stop picking up. And those Facebook memories that you see like pop up. There was one that popped up and it was like my status. It was so melodramatic. I'm embarrassed, but it was like, it's official. Nobody likes depressed people. And every year I see that pop up and I just remember how like all my friends disappeared, which I get. Like they're kids. Like they don't want to deal with somebody like that. But at the same time, it's just, it's remarkable where I was, and just like I didn't know how to hide it then. And I learned those skills in high school and then in college, where it was like I knew that if I let on how I was really feeling and I let people see my depression or my anxiety, they were just going to poof, leave. And so I like it's taken a lot for me over the years to open up to people and be like, I mean, even on medication, like I still have bad days. Like I think it was Thursday this week. I'd had like 20 good days in a row and I'm like feeling really great. It was like Thursday, I bottomed out. And like I called my sister, I told her, I was just like, yeah, today's a bad day. It really is. And I let my boyfriend know. I was like, I've had a lot of good days in a row and today's just it's not happening for some reason. And so, but it's taken a lot since that experience to be able to open up to people and be like, yeah, I'm depressed right now. Like I can't find joy in anything. I'm really low. I'm crying all the time and it'll pass. Like it always does. But like, yeah, that experience was really hard for me when I was a kid.
Thanks for sharing that, Tori. I appreciate that you can now look at it and think, wow, I mean, that was really heavy for my friends and they didn't know what to do. And so the only thing they knew to do was to step away. I know that had to be hurtful for you. But I mean, the wisdom that you've gained from it, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. Did I see another? Marie. And then Tessa.
For me, it was when I was breastfeeding, when I first had my baby. I had like a lot of friends. I was very social, and then my baby I had to lay down, and I had to put her feet above my head, so she was kind of like this direction, and that was the only way that I could breastfeed. So I was home by myself, locked in a door. Like that's what we did all the time. And people just eventually stopped calling. They stopped asking to go out. They stopped because I couldn't. And that was a very lonely time in my life.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Just out of curiosity, both for real quick for Tori and for Marie, have you reconnected with people that kind of stepped away?
No. It was hard because a lot of those same people went to my college later. They came down to South Carolina and we went to the same Bible college, and never. I tried, but no.
Okay.
I did briefly reconnect, and with everything happening with the divorce and everything like that, I have no connection to those people anymore.
Okay. Well, the truth is, everybody can't go with you where you're going. So just putting that out there. All right, Tessa.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's two experiences, and like obviously I've missed most of the conversation from before, but I know we also talked about anxiety and depression. So I've once, about 10 years ago, I suffered from what I call reactionary depression. So it was specific. It's similar to, like, it's all the symptoms of clinical depression, but it's related to one specific event, or different specific events could be. So in my case, it was a really bad breakup, and I went into that in a time where I worked with people that I supported that often had depression or anxiety, and I'd studied social work and mediation and coaching and I don't know what, and I was very much like, this is not happening to me. There's no way that I should be able to deal with this. There's no way that I should be having these things. But I had a really great counselor who really said, look, you can't fight this. This is happening whether you like it or not, and you have to go through it and just do the best you can. And I think there was two things happening. The distancing was partly me, that because I felt partly ashamed of it and I felt I should be able to deal with it, that I didn't want to see some people because I didn't want them to know that I was struggling. I had to really consciously distance myself from my mom to a degree, who really wanted to be there for me, but could not do it in a way that felt helpful to me. So then it made me feel worse. And I found that one really difficult, but I did manage in the end to talk to her, and that we could still talk about some other things, but really talking about what was going on, I had to really protect myself, if you like, to say, look, I can't have this conversation every time. Every time I leave it feeling that I have to justify myself or have to defend what's happening. And we agreed that she wanted to be there for me, but could only do it in her way, and that her way just wasn't helping me. So it was painful for both of us, I think, but it actually was in a way a good conversation, but that was very hard. And I mean, with her later, like about other things we can talk, but there's like, yeah, we just have found a way of that certain things, it just doesn't work to deal with it if I'm in that space. And I think that's actually been good for our relationship, which had been quite on and off, if you like, since I was a kid. It actually helped our relationship in the end once I came out of that depression, that we could be more honest with each other, what works and doesn't, and that actually helped the relationship in hindsight, I think. But I've also been really lucky that I had some people around me where I could really be that accepted that I wasn't great, and I was like, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't do anything, and that I had some friends that really were like, doesn't matter, you come over to us or we come over to you and we eat with you. So that was my way of making sure that I got to eat and stuff. So I also had the other side of it where I could have some people where we could consciously just say, look, don't worry about it, you can be whatever way you are right now, and we'll make sure. And that was my way of looking after myself, because I couldn't do it for myself, and I had some people that could do it for me. But one thing I would like to add was that as a kid, I really, really struggled badly with anxiety and stuff. And for a long time, my way of dealing was to completely distance myself from everything and everyone, as a way of not feeling the overwhelm of feeling everyone's pain, feeling everyone's emotions. And that completely destroyed myself, if you like, because then I felt so disconnected. So I had to really learn a way of dealing with being sensitive, but not using disconnection as a way of trying to cope, because it actually was even more, I think, devastating, if you like, of like that and made me feel more lonely. So I think that was the other side, I think I just wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Tessa. Shelby, I see your hand. I want to just mention to Tessa, I think that was a beautiful story that you shared about the friends that were like, hey, we'll come to you or you come over to us, but either way, we're going to come around alongside you and help you through this. That is beautiful, because I know not everybody will have that experience, right? Not everybody will allow that experience. So I'm just so glad that you experienced that and that you shared that. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's one thing I always want to say to people. I said, look, asking for help is incredibly hard, but the hardest thing is to accept it. Because sometimes people want to help you, but to actually say, yes, please help me, and to not go, oh, no, that's fine, it's okay, don't worry.
Right.
I have found too that people actually, the right people, actually appreciate it when you accept their help. It's interesting. Yeah. If you find the right community, which we're working on building here at Her Version. So that's awesome. I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over. I'm going to let Tessa kind of settle in a little bit. I'm going to scoot over to Elizabeth to take over. Tell us a little bit about yourself and question.
My question is going to be rooted in telling a little bit about my experience with depression. So one thing that you might find in studying depression or reading about it is that it has the manifestation of grief. The sensations and experiences of depression and grief are very analogous. And oftentimes the differentiation in diagnosis is length of experience. And one thing that I know to be true for myself is that I have, and someone mentioned this before, I forget. I don't think she's on with us anymore. How emotion sits in the body. And so for myself, I have had the experience where I will have the physical sensation of grief with no cause. And it is very specifically like it's a very clear and distinct sensation of a tightness and a coldness in my heart. And that I can literally follow that sensation all the way. It's like drawing a line down my arm all the way to the tip of my ring finger and my middle finger.
Wow.
It's a very specific sensation. And that's a very telltale sign of like, oh, this is an episode. So my question is, do you have any of those physical alignments with either the depression or the anxiety? And is there anything that you have found that, like, when you address the physical sensation, can relieve the emotion? Does anybody have? Emily.
Okay, I love having conversation about how we store emotion in our bodies. My first professional background is in sports medicine, so I did a lot of hands-on work with athletes, and a lot of the time, a lot of my educational preparation was how we store emotions and how that can impact performance. So for me, what I have learned from myself from that background knowledge, and then more information around Reiki and massage and all of that, I store my sadness in my abdomen, and my hip flexors, my psoas muscles get really tight, and it manifests as having like an upset stomach. And I am trained in how to do muscle work to release that. So I, have those tools that I can do it myself, but I'm very big on trying to teach people who have similar emotion or similar manifestations physically from those types of emotions, how to do that themselves, because we store so much in our abdomen and in our glutes. There's a lot of anger in your butt. You store a lot of anger in your glutes. But it's huge for me. I can tell when I am in that overwhelm and my normal tools aren't working. I have to take time. I lay down on the floor. I prop my legs up on the couch, and I spend 20 minutes working on releasing my hip flexors. And then I feel an immediate calm once I have taken that time for myself. And I also know not everyone can do that. Not everyone has that time or that space. So there are definitely other ways that are helpful for me. Breath work. I do some yoga, some sort of like yoga movement. I try to do at least 5 to 10 minutes a day to keep that whole area open so that I'm less likely to get in that space of super tight storage. But gosh, if societally we could just talk more about how we store emotions in our body instead of letting the emotions be information about what we give meaning to, wouldn't that be amazing? We'd all be more in connection with our bodies and ourselves, our experiences.
Yeah, definitely. Like your feelings. Where are you feeling your feelings? We ask that question more often. I think I saw Marie.
Yeah, so for me, it manifested as fibromyalgia. I was diagnosed with that. It was a lot of tightness in my shoulders. I did, even to the point that I did physical therapy so that I could get an MRI so that I could check to see if there was something physically wrong with me. And there wasn't. There was no explanation. There was no physical proof. And so it was definitely at that point that I needed to shift my thinking for myself. What is it? Why is that happening? And it was definitely, that saying where they say you hold the weight of the world on your shoulders. and I was taking on a lot. And unlike Sabrina, I always said yes. For my, that was definitely something I learned from my mother, that I needed to people please. And so I took on a lot, and always I could fix it. Wanted to be Miss Fix It. And there's still some aspects of that of me, but for the most part, I learned to say no more often, more boundaries, and know that I don't have to say yes all the time.
100%.
Freaking
I'm going to just interject real fast. We're going to go with Tori, and then we're going to have Shelby take over.
Okay, so I'm really into astrology and chakras and, crystals and all that woo-woo stuff. And like this chakra system works for me. Like if I have a headache, I know that like I'm overwhelmed, I'm not following my intuition. If I have a stomach ache, I'm like, okay, where am I giving my power away? Like if, I actually like my heart chakra is the one that is usually the most issue. And I think I mentioned before how I had a bad day on Thursday. It didn't register that I was having a bad day yet. And the day was fine. The day was normal, but like I was having a tough day. And it was like I woke up that morning and I was having trouble breathing. And, my first thought is external, like, oh, maybe it's allergies, or, maybe my lupus is flaring a little bit or something like that. But it was like probably around noon, I started realizing that I was like experiencing that grief feeling and that like heartbroken feeling. And I'm like, oh, my heart chakra is like, I need some self-care. Like I need to start loving myself right away. I need to allow other people in my life to love me. And so that's when I, brought in my sister and my boyfriend, where I'm just like, I'm having a tough time. And then by the next day, that tightness in my chest had completely left. And so that's like, I don't know, that system rings true for me completely.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that, Tori. Shelby.
Hi, Shelby. I am a graphic designer in Denver and have been struggling with a lung disease for the last 8 years. So my question is, since this is an open panel and we've kind of been having great discussions, is there anything that you feel that you've picked up from this panel today that you want to add to your repertoire of tools that somebody else brought up? Sabrina.
Shelby bringing up the point system. Girl, because that's what it is. I so appreciate like you put that with the actual word that I can use to be able to express what I'm feeling. So when I don't feel like doing something that seems so simple to somebody, I can very easily say all my points are gone for the day. That's it.
Yep.
No more points left. So I love it.
Yeah. With the point system, I also I used to assign guilt of being that, oh gosh, I can't do that. But now I don't assign guilt to anything anymore. And I just think of what is best for me, since I'm the only one that's in my body and that can feel how sick I feel, how tired I feel, how sad I feel, because only you know what is best for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Tori.
Sabrina's saying no to stupid things. Like that was a huge light bulb moment for me. I was like, I'm really good with like work boundaries, like, I'm not going to work late and stuff like that. And, but all of a sudden I was just like, whoa, like how many little things that, like Elizabeth was saying, erode that happiness and that contentment. And I'm just like, whoa, like I need to have some conversations with, people at my work and people around here to like be like, okay, I'm going to start saying no to stupid things, because that's kind of eating away at me a little bit.
100%.
Renee.
So I like this point system, but I'm afraid to use it because I'll give myself like 10 points and it'll be done by 9 a.m. and everybody will get a no. So I don't know. But I really do like the idea of thinking about, okay, Renee, you don't have to keep pushing yourself so hard. If your energy, if your points have run out for the day, they've just run out, and that's okay. because we'll start over tomorrow. So I really do like that concept.
Yeah.
Sabrina?
I do want to say, since we're on the subject of the point system or having a system in general, one of the things that I do that may not necessarily relate to this panel, but just because it seems like a few other people appreciated it too, is there's, I don't know where I got this from, but in one of the lectures or classes that I've taken through coaching, supposedly as a human, we're only capable of answering like 20 or 25 questions a day. I don't know if anyone else has heard that, but if you think about simple things like when you wake up in the morning, what are you going to wear? That's like one question. Like, what are you going to eat? That's 2 questions. What are you going to make for dinner? That's 3 questions. You know, your kid asks you something, that's 4 questions. So if you think about how many questions we're asking ourselves every single day, our capacity of our brain is only allotted, like able or capable, until you hit a point where it's just too overwhelming. That's why at the end of the day, sometimes you feel so emotionally or mentally exhausted, because of all of the questions that you're answering all day. Your mind is going a million miles an hour. So one of the things that I've also done in my life is alleviate the amount of questions I have to ask myself. So I, minimized my wardrobe. So I only have a few things to pick from now. So it's not so overwhelming. I no longer wear jewelry, so I don't have to worry, am I accessorized correctly? My makeup is super minimum now, so I don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff. I'm now no longer dyeing my hair. So there's like a lot of things that I've minimized in my life to be able to mentally and emotionally be capable of, doing the things that I do that are important to me, such as creating this community. So a lot of the things I've gotten rid of in my personal life in order to be able to succeed where I want to succeed, where, that's important, that I'm passionate, like truly passionate about, in order to make sure that there's enough space in there for me to actually be answering questions that I feel are like, important for the community, this community that we're building, important for, the world and the generations going forward. So be cognizant of that also when you're moving through your day. Anybody else on Shelby's question? That was a good question. I've been taking notes. So I have 2 pages of notes already. All right, we're going with Tessa.
Thank you. I'm hoping I ask a question that hasn't been asked yet, but we'll see. If it has been, I have others, so let me know. But first, so I've been like doing healing and coaching work for as long as I can remember, really, but more professionally for the last 10, 15 years. And more recently, specifically, I work more and more with people who support others to really help them to also look after their own needs. And not so much in a way as like when I talk about balance, it mainly is like not so much the separation between the time or the energy and space you have for looking after others versus the time or energy you look for yourself. More to see that it really is at the same time, that like, when you really look after yourself, through that you're looking after others, but also that if you do it in a way that it's not depleting yourself, that by looking after, you're also looking after you. So more creating it as a more unison, if you like, I guess. So I work with all kind of different people. And one of the things that for me is most important is to always be honest that sharing my own stories and my own stuff, that not just as, I think it's not about that I have experienced what my clients experience. Sometimes that's the case, but not necessarily. I am also professional. Like I have a background in social work and conflict studies and other things. But I do think whatever my studies are, I'm also a human being who has his own challenges and struggles in life. So I do share those, like not to say that. And one of the things that came up from today's topic was that I actually shared it in the post where I shared Sabrina's message of today, that I said, look, I still suffer from anxiety. It's not as often anymore, but it's like learning to deal with it. And I actually don't like the word dealing with it, because I don't think that's what it is. But it's become easier to embrace life and myself, regardless of the being sensitive and anxiety. But it doesn't mean I don't have it. Doesn't mean I don't experience pain. Doesn't mean I don't experience suffering. Like I have a strong spiritual practice and a strong personal development practice and everything else. But I still, it's still there. So for me, my experiences was when I stopped fighting being sensitive and suffering from anxiety. Now, when it comes up, I literally described it as I still experience the contraction in my chest, the choking in the throat, the suffocating fear, but when I actually manage to stay with it and hold it and bring compassion to myself, bring compassion to it, then it kind of softens. And then I can handle whatever's going on again. And sometimes I can't, and that's where the asking help and especially accepting help comes in. So my question is more like, for me, that turning point came, I think as a kid, as I said, I went from either I was fully involved and I felt everything and I would be banging my head against the wall, asking my mom to make it stop because I couldn't handle it anymore. And then I would completely retreat and try to keep the whole world out. And then I will feel lonely and disconnected until I started deepening this and learning this practice of more being fully in myself and in the world and accepting that these things arise and just bring compassion to it. And that really helped me. And the asking help, as I said, I think that's been a really learning point as well later in life, that needs to be part of it. And my question is really like, did you have a turning point where you really, this difference of that you were unable to deal with things or coping with it, or that you were giving out to yourself or feeling the depression or giving out to someone else or maybe, something else. And then what was it that helped you to really learn to live with it in a way that it's, not something to get rid of or deal with, but something that you can, I don't know, embrace, live with, if that makes sense as a question. And I can't really see the names because...
That's Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny that you asked this question because it had sort of come up and it was something that I wanted to mention. I sort of feel like for me, I have come to accept that I just feel very intense emotions, and that's a gift. I have come to accept and understand the fact that, my episodes are in fact episodes. I have waves, I have dips, I have highs. From my experience of being medicated, I also know that sometimes in trying to control the dips, the highs are not as high also. And so it's just like my emotions are a superpower now. Like I can feel so much more intensely than the vast majority of the population. And I've come to accept and appreciate that as a gift. And it's not something that I want to manipulate anymore. And I wanted to address the comment. That's why Sabrina left it up for such a long time. I think it is important to recognize that like a lot of the depression and imbalances that we are experiencing as a culture, as a human race, can stem from our disconnection from nature. And one tool that was very instrumental for me is just starting to pay attention to the moon, the lunar cycles, and understanding like we are all deeply affected by the moon, the signs that it goes through, the elements that it's going through, and also the moon phase, whether it's a new moon, first quarter, last quarter, full moon, all of that stuff. So I highly recommend tracking your moods against the moon cycles just to learn yourself and how you are, because I mean, when the moon is in a fire sign, you're supposed to like get like a burst of energy. But for me, fire signs are all in my 4th, 8th, and 12th houses, which are very low, typically low energy times. So being able to understand how the moon is affecting you personally is a great tool. But also, like, not everyone has access to the green spaces.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
not everyone has access to green spaces, number one. And number two, I love the beach. I would be happy living in a hut if it meant that I could roll out of bed into the ocean. However, in DC, I was walking my dog in 30-degree, like my eyelashes were freezing. I would like the cold was literally giving me a panic attack. You can't just take a walk to deal with your depression when it's minus degrees outside.
Yeah.
So
that's real. That's real.
Like, I understand that, yes, a lot of it can be we can find a lot of medication in our connection to nature, but let's also recognize the fact that that is not an option for a lot of people.
Especially to do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
you can be able on the weekend, go to the park, but on a daily basis, if you're working and you're a mother and you have all the responsibilities, or a father, whoever, I agree with you. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it resonates so much what you say, like, you know, that it's about that accepting, right? And embracing that you have that gift, what you first mentioned. I think to see like the sensitivity as a gift, and at the same time, the acknowledgement that sometimes it's hard, but the nature as well. And actually one thing I do, I work with a lot of people that work in the city, and I say, even if you can just have a plant, or even like one lady once when she came on a walk, she brought a leaf, and she still a month later said, I still have the leaf, and sometimes I hold it, and then I remember even how I felt during the meditation walk and stuff. So I think even if you're not able to go into nature a lot, sometimes you can bring nature into your house a little bit as well. So I think that can help people as well. Yeah.
I can also connect with Elizabeth on talking about how she's an emotional being, because I'm the same. For those of you who've been on with me, when I just break down into a crazy, ugly cry, I just feel all the feels. I'm just a very sensitive, emotional person. I've apologized for it my entire life. Been told that I was weak. You know, I've gotten the eye roll several thousands of times in my life of, oh my God, there she goes again. All growing up, was considered the crybaby, and it wasn't, and I wasn't doing it on purpose. And it got to the point where I hated it, and I can't, it's very difficult to hold it back. It's very difficult to like keep those emotions in, and it's very frustrating sometimes. And it's gotten to the point now where it's just, sometimes if it's a subject that I know is going to be, a little more touching. A lot of times I just emphasize with that upfront, like, hey, listen, I don't know what's going to happen. And then other times with topics that are just whatever, they'll say something and it just triggers something in me that I just can't control. So some of us are, just heavy feelers.
That's where with heavy feeling, I'm very proud of my sister, because my sister's trying to give my nieces space to feel their emotions, but try and understand it early on. So my 8-year-old niece, she is actually in therapy, and it's helped so much. And so my sister has given her more control, so she gets to have more choices in her day. And so she feels like she has more control. And so she's expressing herself more and communicating better, and she's in more control of her emotions.
Yeah. I think that's so beautiful that you, in a way, you learn to be in control by letting go, in a way, right? Being allowed to let go. And that is what the control, that if you try to control it and suppress it, it actually gets worse. And then when you actually allow to feel it, that gives the control.
We're going to close up with Emma.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I just was going to say, don't see the name again. Thanks.
Well, gosh, I feel like heavy. We're going to close up with me, but no, it's okay. So our living son is 4 years old. And I think what Shelby just said about her sister, and Renee mentioned in a comment that she's doing the same with her children. And I think this is a really great takeaway for anyone listening. You can start now with the little people in your world, not just with yourself and the adults around you, but specifically with the little people, to remind them. So we tell our son all the time, whatever emotion you have is fine. Whether you're angry or mad or sad, really happy, it doesn't matter. The emotion is okay. What's important is that you learn how to have a reaction that doesn't hurt yourself or others. So let's, share how you're feeling, why you feel it. And he is very emotive. It's so lovely to see a 4-year-old talk about. He can say exactly what he's feeling, and he might not know how to explain it, but he can say, I'm just so sad, Mommy. I'm sad and I need some time. And when we start to empower our children, our little people, the little people that we interact with, no matter whether they're our children or not, we start to shift how society looks at emotions, anxiety, depression, all of the things. Yes. So, not just for parents, but for everyone. When you become more comfortable with discussing how you feel and why you feel, and like we've talked about, where you feel it in your body, we give permission to the generations coming up behind us to do the same thing. And that is going to change the way society interacts with these diagnoses and these experiences. And I'm just really grateful for all of you. This has been lovely. Thank you.
Yes. Absolutely. As always, thank you so much for everyone who participated today and hung out with us for the 2 hours. Those of you that are listening live still, we so appreciate you hanging out with us throughout the entire 2 hours. This has been very beneficial, and I certainly hope that you guys got some nuggets of information from this. And this opened up a lot of things for me as far as viewing my past and other options, and even just individuals that I deal with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, for some other options for them to be able to take home with them, and to help dissect their own things that they're dealing with in their lives. So I so appreciate all of you. For those of you watching on the replay, I always like to say, make sure you hashtag replay so that we know who or where you are and where you're from, and shoot you out some love. So thank you so much for joining us here on the Her Version platform. I hope you received some awesome tips on how to manage your anxiety and your depression. I know I did. These women, along with others, take time every month to open up about parts of their lives in order to inspire the world and give back. If you resonated with any of them, please follow or reach out to them in any way you can. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, make sure you reach out to me here. We collect stories. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I am so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows people to share their truth and inspire others. And as always, until next time, do something awesome.